My mother-in-law looked at my 7-year-old daughter, smiled and said, "Adopted kids don't deserve cake." Then she picked up the birthday cake, the one with Eloise's name written in pink frosting, the one I had custom ordered 3 weeks in advance, and threw it straight into the trash, in front of 30 children, in front of their parents, in front of my entire neighborhood. The room went silent. Not the kind of silence that happens when someone drops a glass or says something awkward. This was different. This was the kind of silence that falls when something unforgivable happens in broad daylight and no one knows how to react. I watched my daughter's face crumble, not dramatically, not with screaming or thrashing, just this quiet collapse, like watching a house of cards fold in on itself. Her little hands, which had been pressed together in excitement just seconds before, dropped to her sides. Her eyes, which had been squeezed shut ready to make a wish, opened wide with confusion. And then the tears came. Silent, steady. The kind of tears that don't ask for attention because they're too deep for that. I didn't scream. I didn't grab Francine by her pearls and drag her out of my house. I didn't give her the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. Instead, I walked over to Eloise, knelt down so we were eye to eye, and said, "It's okay, Butterfly, I've got you." I picked her up, held her against my chest, and turned to face the room full of frozen parents and bewildered children. I said 5 words. "The party is over." That's it. No explanation, no apology, no attempt to salvage what couldn't be salvaged. I watched as parents gathered their kids, avoiding eye contact with me, whispering to each other as they collected goodie bags that would never be opened. I watched as the bounce house sat empty in the backyard, still humming with air. I watched as 30 children filed out of my home, many of them crying because they didn't understand what had happened, only that something had gone terribly wrong. And through all of it, I held Eloise. I held her until every last guest was gone. I held her until my arms ached. I held her because that's what mothers do when the world tries to tell their children they don't belong. My name is Gemma. I'm 41 years old. I've been a pediatric nurse for 16 years. I've held babies taking their first breaths, and I've held parents watching their children take their last. I thought I understood pain. I thought I understood cruelty. But nothing prepared me for watching my own daughter be told she didn't deserve a birthday cake because she didn't share my blood. The woman who did this, that's Francine Bellamy, my mother-in-law. She's 68 years old. She wears her silver hair in a perfect bob. She attends church every Sunday, volunteers at the hospital gift shop on Tuesdays, and hosts a book club on Thursday evenings. To the outside world, she's a pillar of the community, respectable, proper. The kind of woman who sends handwritten thank you notes and never forgets a birthday. But I knew the truth. I'd known it for years. Behind the pearl earrings and the charitable donations and the Sunday morning prayers was a woman who believed that family meant blood and nothing else. A woman who looked at my daughter and saw a stranger, an outsider, a child who didn't count. She'd been testing me for 3 years, little comments here and there, always delivered with a smile, always just vague enough that I couldn't call her out without looking paranoid. "She's so pretty. It's a shame you don't know anything about her real parents. You're so brave for taking in someone else's child. I could never do that. Does she ever ask about her real mother? That must be so hard for you." Each comment was a pinprick, small enough to dismiss, frequent enough to leave scars. But that afternoon, at my daughter's 7th birthday party, Francine didn't deliver a pinprick. She drove a knife straight through my daughter's heart and twisted it in front of everyone we knew. She made a mistake that day, a big one. She thought she was testing me. She thought she was proving a point about blood and belonging and who gets to be part of a family. But she wasn't testing me. She was hurting my child. And that's something I will never forgive. 4 days after the party, Francine received a package at her front door. It was a plain brown box, no return address, nothing special about it. She probably thought it was something she'd ordered online, maybe a new book for her club, maybe a kitchen gadget she'd seen advertised. She opened it at her kitchen table, probably with a cup of tea nearby, probably humming to herself. And then she saw what was inside. Her neighbor found her an hour later, sitting on the kitchen floor, surrounded by the contents of the box, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. What was in that package? I'll tell you. But first, you need to understand something. You need to understand who Eloise is. You need to understand what she survived before she came to us. You need to understand what that birthday party meant to her, not just as a celebration, but as proof. Proof that she was wanted, proof that she belonged, proof that she was finally, truly home. Because what Francine destroyed that afternoon wasn't just a cake. It was 3 years of healing, 3 years of trust, 3 years of a little girl learning to believe that she was worthy of love. And what I put in that package? It was everything Francine needed to understand exactly what she had done. I met Theo when I was 26 years old. He was working as a substitute teacher at the time, filling in wherever they needed him, while he finished his master's degree in counseling. I was 3 years into my nursing career, pulling double shifts in the pediatric ward, running on coffee and the stubborn belief that I could save every child who came through those doors. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue. He was standing by the grill, arguing passionately about whether hot dogs counted as sandwiches. I thought he was ridiculous. I also thought he had the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. By the end of the night, he had my phone number. By the end of the month, I knew I was going to marry him. We got married 2 years later in a small ceremony at his grandmother's farm. Theo's father had passed away when he was in college, so it was just Francine on his side of the family. She wore a cream-colored dress to the wedding. I thought it was a little too close to white, but I didn't say anything. I was too happy to care about small things like that. Theo and I tried to have children right away. We were both in our late 20s, healthy, optimistic. We assumed it would happen naturally. A year passed, then 2. We saw specialists. We did rounds of treatments that left me exhausted and emotional and feeling like my body had betrayed me. We spent our savings on procedures that didn't work. We grieved pregnancies that never were and futures that kept slipping away. By the time I turned 34, I was done. Not done wanting to be a mother, but done punishing myself for something that wasn't my fault. Theo held me one night after another negative test and said, "There are other ways to build a family." I knew he was right. I think I'd known it for a while. I was just afraid to admit it because admitting it felt like giving up. We started the adoption process the following spring. It took 2 years of paperwork, home studies, background checks, and waiting. So much waiting. But I didn't mind. Every form I filled out, every interview I sat through, every reference letter I collected brought me closer to the child I was meant to have. Eloise came into our lives 3 years ago. She was 4 years old. She had been in the foster system since she was 18 months old after being removed from a home where she was neglected and often left alone for days at a time. When we first met her, she wouldn't make eye contact. She flinched at loud noises. She hoarded food in her pockets because she didn't trust that there would be more. The first night she spent in our home, she didn't sleep in her new bedroom. She slept in the hallway outside our door, curled up on the carpet like a little animal who wasn't sure if it was safe to come inside. Theo found her there at 2 a.m. He didn't move her. He just lay down on the floor next to her and stayed there until morning. It took 6 months before Eloise would let me hug her without stiffening. It took a year before she stopped hiding food. It took 2 years before she stopped waking up screaming from nightmares about being left alone. But slowly, day by day, she began to heal. She started laughing. She started asking questions. She started calling me Mommy instead of Miss Gemma. The first time she said it, I was washing dishes, and she tugged on my shirt and said, "Mommy, can I have some juice?" I burst into tears right there at the kitchen sink. She looked at me with those big brown eyes and said, "Did I say something wrong?" I knelt down and pulled her close and said, "No, Butterfly, you said something perfect." Eloise became obsessed with butterflies around that time. She said she liked them because they started out as caterpillars and turned into something beautiful. I think she saw herself in that. A little girl who had crawled through darkness and was finally starting to spread her wings. By her 7th birthday, Eloise had transformed. She was bright and curious and full of questions about everything. She loved purple. She loved strawberry ice cream. She loved helping me cook dinner, even though her help usually meant making a mess. She had friends at school. She was reading above her grade level. She had a favorite stuffed butterfly named Winnie that went everywhere with her. She also had a question she asked me at least once a month. "Am I really yours forever?" Every time she asked, I gave her the same answer, forever, and 3 days after that. She would smile when I said it, but I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes. 3 years wasn't enough to erase 4 years of abandonment. Part of her was still that little girl curled up in the hallway, waiting to be sent away. That's why this birthday party mattered so much. It wasn't just a party. It was proof. Proof that she had a family. Proof that she had friends. Proof that she was celebrated and wanted and loved. I wanted her to blow out those candles and make a wish and know, deep in her bones, that she was home. I spent 3 weeks planning every detail. I ordered the cake from the best bakery in town. 3 tiers, purple frosting, hand-painted butterflies climbing up the sides, her name written in pink script across the top. I rented a bounce house for the backyard. I made goodie bags filled with butterfly stickers and candy. I invited every child from her class and every kid in our neighborhood. I wanted this party to be the day Eloise stopped asking if she was really mine forever. I wanted her to know the answer without having to ask. I had no idea that Francine was about to destroy everything I had built. The morning of the party, Eloise woke me up at 5 in the morning. She was standing next to my bed, fully dressed in her purple butterfly dress, her hair tangled from sleep, her eyes wide with excitement. She whispered, "Mommy, is it time yet?" I pulled her into bed with me and said, "Not yet, Butterfly, but soon." She couldn't go back to sleep. Neither could I. So we went downstairs together and made pancakes. She helped me mix the batter while Theo inflated balloons in the living room. By 8 in the morning, our house looked like a butterfly had exploded inside it. Purple streamers hung from every doorway. Butterfly cutouts covered the walls. The bounce house was inflating in the backyard, growing larger by the minute. Eloise stood in the middle of it all, turning in slow circles, taking everything in. She looked at me and said, "Mommy, this is the best day of my whole life." I felt my heart swell. This was exactly what I wanted. This was the moment I had been planning for weeks. The guests started arriving at noon. Kids poured through the front door, clutching wrapped presents and bouncing with energy. Parents lingered in the kitchen, making small talk, complimenting the decorations. Eloise ran from friend to friend, showing off Winnie the butterfly, pointing out her favorite streamers, asking everyone if they wanted to see her new room. Francine arrived at 12:30. She was late, which wasn't unusual. She walked through the front door without knocking, looked around the living room and said, "You really went overboard, didn't you?" I smiled and said nothing. I had learned years ago that engaging with her comments only made things worse. She hadn't brought a gift. I noticed, but I didn't mention it. Theo greeted her with a hug and asked if she wanted something to drink. She said she would take a glass of white wine. It was barely past noon, but I poured it anyway. Anything to keep the peace. For the first hour, Francine behaved herself. She sat in the corner of the living room, sipping her wine, watching the chaos unfold with a tight smile on her face. I caught her staring at Eloise a few times, her expression unreadable. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that today would be different. I told myself that even Francine wouldn't ruin a child's birthday party. I was wrong. The first comment came when my neighbor Patricia complimented Eloise's dress. Patricia said, "She looks absolutely beautiful, Gemma, like a little princess." Before I could respond, Francine said, "Gemma always dresses her up, probably compensating for something." Patricia's smile faltered. I pretended I hadn't heard. The second comment came when Theo lifted Eloise onto his shoulders so she could see over the crowd of kids. She was laughing, her hands gripping his hair, her face glowing with joy. Francine walked over and said, "She's getting too old for that, Theo. She's not a baby. You're going to spoil her." Theo's jaw tightened. He set Eloise down gently and walked away without responding. The third comment came when Eloise brought Francine a flower she had picked from the backyard. She held it out proudly and said, "This is for you, Grandma, because I love you." Francine took the flower, looked at it, and said, "That's a weed, sweetheart, not a flower." Eloise's face fell. She walked away quietly, the rejection settling into her small shoulders. I watched all of this happen. I watched my daughter try again and again to connect with a woman who refused to see her as family. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Francine by the arm and demand she leave, but I didn't, because it was Eloise's day, because I didn't want to cause a scene, because I still believed, foolishly, that the worst was over. At 2 o'clock, I brought out the cake. It was magnificent. 3 tiers of purple perfection, butterflies cascading down the sides, 7 pink candles waiting to be lit. I set it on the table in the center of the room. The children gathered around, their faces bright with anticipation. Eloise stood at the head of the table, her hands clasped together, her smile so wide it looked like it might break her face. I lit the candles. The room began to sing. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Eloise. Happy birthday to you. Eloise closed her eyes. She was about to make her wish. And then Francine stepped forward. She walked to the table with purpose, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She looked at the cake. She looked at Eloise. And then she said it, loud enough for everyone to hear. Adopted kids don't deserve cake. This isn't a real birthday. She's not really part of this family. Before anyone could move, Francine grabbed the cake with both hands and threw it into the large trash bin near the food table. Frosting splattered across the rim. The plastic tiers cracked on impact. 30 children stood frozen, their mouths open, their eyes wide with shock. And my daughter, my beautiful 7-year-old daughter who had waited her whole life for a moment like this, began to cry. That night, after all the guests had gone, after Theo had driven his mother home in silence, after I had bathed Eloise and tucked her into bed, I sat alone in the kitchen surrounded by the wreckage of what should have been the happiest day of my daughter's life. Purple streamers hung limp from the ceiling, deflated balloons littered the floor. The trash bin still sat where it had been, the ruined cake visible through the clear plastic liner. I couldn't bring myself to take it out. I just sat there, staring at it, feeling something cold and hard settle into my chest. Theo came home around 9. He walked into the kitchen and sat down across from me. His eyes were red. He looked like he had aged 10 years in a single afternoon. He said, "I don't know what to say, Gemma. I don't know how to make this right." I looked at him and said, "You can't. She can't either. What's done is done." He put his head in his hands. "She's my mother. I've known my whole life that she's difficult, that she has opinions about things she shouldn't have opinions about. But I never thought she would do something like this. Not to a child. Not to our child." I reached across the table and took his hand. "This isn't your fault, Theo. You didn't throw that cake. You didn't say those words." He looked up at me. "What do we do now?" I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But something was already forming in my mind. Not revenge. Revenge would be petty. Revenge would be about me. This had to be about something bigger. This had to be about making Francine understand exactly what she had destroyed. I went to bed that night, but I didn't sleep. I lay there in the darkness, listening to Theo breathe beside me, thinking about my daughter down the hall. Around 3 in the morning, Eloise appeared in our doorway. She was clutching Winnie to her chest. She said, "Mommy, can I sleep with you? I had a bad dream." I pulled back the covers and she climbed in between us. She pressed her small body against mine and whispered, "Mommy, am I not real?" My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I held her tighter and said, "You are the most real thing in my entire life, Butterfly. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." She fell asleep after that. I didn't. I lay there with my daughter in my arms and I made a decision. Francine would never hurt Eloise again. But before I cut her out of our lives forever, she was going to understand exactly what she had done. The next morning, I started gathering materials. I went through every photo album in the house, pulling out pictures of Eloise, her adoption day when she stood between me and Theo in the courthouse, holding a stuffed butterfly the social worker had given her, her first Christmas with us, sitting on Francine's lap opening a present, her first day of kindergarten, waving at the camera with her backpack almost bigger than she was, every milestone, every memory, every moment of the past 3 years. Then I went to Eloise's room and collected something else, every card she had ever made for Grandma Francine, birthday cards, Mother's Day cards, random Tuesday cards that said things like, "I love you, Grandma," and "Thank you for being nice to me," and "You are the best grandma in the world." Each one was decorated with butterfly drawings in purple crayon. Each one was signed with Eloise's careful, wobbly handwriting. Francine had never displayed these cards. She accepted them politely when Eloise handed them over, then tucked them away somewhere out of sight. But I had kept copies. I had photographed every single one because I knew they mattered to Eloise, even if they didn't matter to Francine. On the second day, I reached out to the parents who had been at the party. I sent a simple message. I'm documenting what happened at Eloise's birthday party. If you're willing, I would appreciate a written statement describing what you witnessed. Within 48 hours, I had 23 responses. Every single one described the same thing: Francine's words, Francine's actions, the look on Eloise's face when her cake hit the trash. I printed all 23 statements. I assembled the photo album, I gathered the cards, and then I sat down at my kitchen table and wrote a letter by hand. I wrote about what Eloise had survived before she came to us. I wrote about the food hoarding and the nightmares and the nights she slept in our hallway because she didn't believe she was safe. I wrote about the 3 years it took to teach her that she was wanted. I wrote about what that birthday party meant to her and what Francine's words had taken away. And at the end, I wrote this: "You will never see Eloise again. Not because I'm punishing you, but because I will never allow anyone to make my daughter feel like she doesn't belong. I hope someday you understand what you lost. It wasn't just a relationship with a grandchild. It was the chance to be loved unconditionally by a little girl who wanted nothing more than for you to see her as family." I sealed everything in a plain brown box. No return address, no explanation on the outside. Then I drove to the post office and mailed it myself. 4 days after the birthday party, Francine Bellamy woke up at her usual time. She made herself a cup of Earl Grey tea, the same brand she had been drinking for 40 years. She watered her orchids on the windowsill. She checked her email and responded to a message from her book club about next month's selection. It was a Tuesday, which meant she would be volunteering at the hospital gift shop later that afternoon. Just another ordinary day in her ordinary life. Around 10 in the morning, she heard the mail truck pull up outside. She walked to the front door in her slippers, expecting the usual collection of bills and catalogs. Instead, she found a plain brown box sitting on her doorstep. No return address, no indication of what was inside. She picked it up and carried it to her kitchen table, mildly curious, but not concerned. She set down her tea and reached for a pair of scissors. She cut through the packing tape carefully, the way she did everything, with precision and control. She folded back the cardboard flaps and looked inside. The first thing she saw was a photograph. Eloise on her adoption day, standing in the courthouse, wearing a white dress with purple butterflies on the hem. She was holding a stuffed butterfly in one hand and Theo's hand in the other. Her smile was nervous but hopeful. Underneath the photo was another, and another, and another. Francine pulled out the entire stack. There must have been 50 photographs. Eloise at her first Christmas with Gemma and Theo. Eloise blowing out candles on her 5th birthday. Eloise sitting on Francine's own lap at Thanksgiving 2 years ago, helping stir the gravy, looking up at her grandmother with pure adoration. Eloise on the first day of kindergarten. Eloise at the beach. Eloise sleeping in the car after a long day at the zoo. Winnie the butterfly tucked under her chin. 3 years of memories. 3 years of a little girl growing up, healing, learning to trust, learning to love. Francine's hands began to shake. She set the photographs down and reached back into the box. This time she pulled out a stack of cards. Handmade cards, the kind children make with construction paper and crayons and too much glue. She opened the first one. It said, "Happy birthday, Grandma. I love you so much. Love, Eloise." There was a drawing of a butterfly in the corner, purple and lopsided and perfect. She opened the second card. "Thank you for the cookies. Grandma. You are the best." Another butterfly, another signature in wobbly letters. She opened a third, a fourth, a 10th. Each one was a declaration of love from a child who had wanted nothing more than to be accepted. Each one was evidence of a relationship that Francine had dismissed, ignored, and ultimately destroyed. By the time she reached the bottom of the stack, tears were streaming down her face. But there was more. Underneath the cards was a thick envelope. She opened it and pulled out a collection of printed pages, 23 of them. Each one was a written statement from a parent who had witnessed what happened at the birthday party. She read the first one. "I watched Francine Bellamy tell a 7-year-old girl that adopted children don't deserve cake. Then I watched her throw the birthday cake in the trash. The child was devastated. It was one of the most cruel things I have ever witnessed." She read the second one. My daughter asked me on the way home why that lady was so mean to Eloise. I didn't know what to tell her. I still don't. She read a third. I have known Gemma and Theo for 5 years. They are wonderful parents. What Francine did was unforgivable. Statement after statement after statement. 23 witnesses. 23 accounts of her cruelty, written down in black and white, impossible to deny or minimize or explain away. At the very bottom of the box was a handwritten letter. Francine recognized Gemma's handwriting immediately. She unfolded it with trembling fingers and began to read. The letter told her everything. It told her about Eloise's life before the adoption, the neglect, the abandonment, the 18 months she spent as an infant, often left alone for days at a time. It told her about the food hoarding, the nightmares, the nights Eloise slept in the hallway because she didn't trust that she was safe. It told her about the 3 years Gemma and Theo had spent teaching Eloise that she was wanted, that she was loved, that she was home. And then it told her what she had destroyed. The final paragraph read, "You will never see Eloise again. Not because I'm punishing you, but because I will never allow anyone to make my daughter feel like she doesn't belong. I hope someday you understand what you lost. It wasn't just a relationship with a grandchild. It was the chance to be loved unconditionally by a little girl who wanted nothing more than for you to see her as family." Francine read the letter twice. Then she slid off her chair onto the kitchen floor. She sat there surrounded by photographs and cards and statements, and she sobbed. Deep, ugly, heaving sobs that came from somewhere she didn't know existed. Her neighbor, a woman named Paulette who had a spare key for emergencies, found her an hour later. Francine was still on the floor, clutching one of Eloise's cards to her chest, crying so hard she couldn't speak. Paulette knelt down beside her and said, "Francine, what happened? What's wrong?" Francine looked at her with swollen eyes and said, "I destroyed everything. I destroyed my whole family." In the weeks that followed, Francine didn't call. She didn't show up at our door. She didn't send letters or flowers or apologies. For a while, I thought that was the end of it. I thought she would simply disappear from our lives and we would all move on. I was wrong. 3 days after she received the package, I got a voicemail. I almost didn't listen to it. I saw her name on my phone and my first instinct was to delete it without hearing a single word. But something made me press play. Francine's voice was hoarse and broken. She said, "Gemma, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. I've spent my whole life believing that family only counts if it's blood. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Eloise is your daughter. She's Theo's daughter. She is real and she is loved, and I was cruel to her in a way that I will regret until the day I die. I'm not asking for another chance. I'm just asking you to tell her something for me. Tell her that Grandma was wrong. Tell her that she deserves every cake in the world. Tell her I'm sorry." I saved the voicemail. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish Francine, but because I needed to see if her words meant anything. Anyone can apologize when they're caught. Anyone can cry when they're confronted with their own cruelty. What matters is what happens next. 6 months passed. Eloise started 2nd grade. She made new friends. She joined a butterfly club at school where kids learned about different species and raised caterpillars in the classroom. She still asked sometimes if Grandma Francine was mad at her. I always told her the same thing. "Grandma made a mistake, Butterfly. A big one. But it wasn't about you. It was never about you." Theo struggled more than he let on. He missed his mother, even after everything she had done. Some nights I would find him sitting in the living room, staring at old family photos. He never said anything, but I knew what he was thinking. How do you reconcile the woman who raised you with the woman who hurt your child? I didn't have an answer for him. Some things don't have neat resolutions. Some wounds don't heal completely. You just learn to live with the scar. Around the 8-month mark, Theo got a phone call that changed everything. It was from a woman named Renata who worked at a local children's home, the same organization where Eloise had spent 2 years of her life before we adopted her. Renata said she was calling because she wanted Theo to know something about his mother. Francine had been volunteering there, 3 days a week for the past 5 months. She showed up every time, worked wherever they needed her, and never asked for recognition or praise. She read books to toddlers. She organized donation drives. She sat with teenagers who had aged out of the system and helped them fill out job applications. But that wasn't all. Renata told Theo that Francine had donated a significant amount of money to start a new program, a birthday party program. Every child in the home would now have a real birthday party every year. Cake, decorations, presents, the whole thing. No child would ever feel forgotten on their special day. Francine had named the program Eloise's Butterflies. When Theo told me, I didn't know what to feel. Part of me was angry that she was using my daughter's name without permission. Part of me was skeptical that this was just another performance, another way for Francine to look good without actually changing. But another part of me, a small, quiet part, wondered if maybe she finally understood. I never reached out to her. I never told her that I knew about the program. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt, but I stopped hating her. That felt like enough. Eloise turned 8 last month. We threw her another party. This time it was even bigger. 4 tiers on the cake, purple butterflies everywhere, 40 kids running through the backyard. She wore a crown made of flowers and declared herself the Queen of the Butterflies. She laughed so hard she got hiccups. She made a wish and blew out every single candle in one breath. At the end of the party, after all the guests had gone home, she handed me a card she had made. It was purple construction paper with a butterfly drawn on the front. Inside, it said, "Dear Mommy, thank you for always making me feel real. I love you forever," and 3 days after that. I held that card and I cried. Not sad tears, happy ones. The kind that come when you realize that all the hard work and all the heartbreak and all the sleepless nights were worth it. Eloise is mine. She has always been mine. Not because of blood or biology, but because I chose her. I choose her every single day. And I will keep choosing her forever. And 3 days after that, if you're watching this and you've ever felt like you don't belong, I want you to know something. Family isn't about where you come from. It's about who shows up for you. It's about who holds you when the world tries to knock you down. It's about who looks at you and sees not what you lack, but everything you are. You are real. You are worthy. You belong. Don't ever let anyone throw your cake in the trash. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below and tell me about a time someone made you feel like you truly belonged. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this community. Until next time.